Hello, lovely people. Hi. So, this is not my first time telling a story, but this is definitely my first time narrating a story. So, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I put up a poll on my Instagram ID asking if you want to hear a true crime story, and a lot of you were like, oh, yes, we do want to. So, I said, okay, here you go, mother here. Gonna do that. So, I got my notes prepared on the case, and I'm going to be referring to them a lot because unlike a lot of people, I cannot keep a lot of information in my head for a long amount of time, so spare me there. Getting started with the case, let me just put this out there that this is one of the cases that really appalled me. I hated what happened in there, and the person had suffered a lot, and I am a fifth year law student. After I read this case, I kind of lost all of my faith from judiciary. Though this is not an Indian case, this is a French case that we'll be talking about today. But again, a lot of things just let me down here. For example, how am I supposed to explain this? You see, judiciary failed a victim, and not only that, but then you have certain sort of expectations from society and the people who are living in the society, right? In sociology, you call it the institutions. So family is an institution, and neighbors are an institution. The police and judiciary is a separate institution. So this person that we're going to talk about today was just not failed by the judiciary per se, but also was failed by all of these institutions of society. So without further ado, let us start with this true crime. I was about to say a story, but come on, this is not a story. This case that has happened with somebody, and I'll try to deal it with the utmost respect, and let's get started with this. So for this case, we'll be traveling all the way back to 1849 of France. Yeah, the beautiful time. Blanche Monnier, a beautiful, youthful socialite with big dreams in her eyes and her whole life ahead of her, including that she had this amazing line of suitors waiting for her to marry them. But then again, Blanche had an eye for someone else. We should be talking about him very soon. Now, Blanche used to live with her mother Louise, who was a very strong-headed woman and was said to have ruled the household with an iron fist, and her older brother Marcel, or if I go to French, it's Marseille. And when it came to marriage in 1874, Blanche declared that, oh yes, she is ready to marry now, and everybody's happy that, yay, finally Blanche has decided whom she's going to marry. But then Blanche made this announcement that she is going to marry this attorney, a lawyer, who was not very rich and who had no noble birth, and was definitely not the kind of suitor Louise, the mother, was hoping that Blanche would get. So just like any other noble woman, she's like, no, you cannot marry him, and he's just not good enough for you. You're supposed to marry somebody who is more richer than we are, who is at the higher level of social hierarchy, and this and that. But Blanche was more of a rebel, and she's like, nay, mom, I'm gonna marry this person, and I don't care what you say about that. And Blanche's mom was not quite happy about this decision. Despite that, Blanche kept on meeting this man at night, hiding from her parents, like her mom and her brother, and she used to sneak out from her house every night to meet him. And things were going all good and romantic. And then one day, Blanche just disappeared, vanished from the face of earth. Where did she go? What happened to her? Nobody knew, but everybody just knew that one day, probably one night in 1874, Blanche went missing and was never to be seen again. Now, if you look into it, not a lot of police intervention took place. I mean, if my daughter would have gone missing, I would have done everything in my resources to try to find her, even if I was unsuccessful in the end of it. But I still would, go to police and I go like, hey, my daughter's missing, why don't you just look into it? But Louise and Marseille didn't do anything like that. They're like, oh yeah, she'll just turn up. Like, people put a lot more effort in finding a lost puppy than what the mother and the brother put in to find Blanche. and that was kind of awkward, but come on, it's their family. Who am I to comment, right? Ironic enough, I'm making a video on them. And then fast forward to 11 years, and it's been 11 years and Blanche is still missing, and nobody knows where she is. Is she kidnapped? Is she murdered? Did she elope? And we do not know what happened. But what we do know is that 11 years later, in 1885, the lawyer Blanche was in love with died. Till 1901, and that is 25 years after the disappearance of Blanche, nobody knew where she is. Everybody forgot about her. They're like, hey, do you remember Blanche? And they're like, who? And they're like, Blanche? And they're like, who? And this was kind of the condition with Blanche. So, and I'm going to pronounce Blanche incorrectly a lot of times, and I think you're just going to have to make peace with that. But when I say Branch or Blanche or Blanche, I mean the same person who has gone missing. In 1900, okay, now this is where things are getting really serious, people. Alright, be serious. Okay, I'll be serious. In 1901, 25 years later after the disappearance, the Paris Attorney General received an anonymous letter. And I'm just going to read out the letter straight out of Wikipedia because there's no point me typing it down. Monsieur Attorney General, I have the honor to inform you of an exceptionally serious occurrence. I speak of a spinster who is locked up in Madame Monnier's house, half-starved and living on a putrid litter for the past 25 years. Yes, she was locked up in her own house for 25 years. And for what? For wanting to marry someone else. In a word, in her own filth. This is the continuation of the letter continued as, in a word, in her own filth. And this was enough to catch Attorney General's notice, and he sent out police to see that whether the claims are true or not. And police went, and Monnier was rescued, but she was living in appalling condition. She was covered in her own feces. She lied on a crusty bedsheet, and she had buried her head inside a blanket because this was the first time in 25 years that she was seeing some other human beings. Also, she was kept in this dark room in her own house in the attic. As if that is not horrible enough, she was found in the most repulsive condition, and she weighed only 25 kgs. I mean, imagine how disgustingly were they keeping her that she just weighed 25 kgs. I mean, that is so less. That is so less. One of the policemen described the state of Monnier and her bed was this how. The unfortunate woman was lying completely naked on a rotten straw mattress. All around her was formed a sort of crust made of excrement, fragment of meat, vegetables, fish, and rotten bread. We also saw oyster shells and bugs running across Mademoiselle Monnier's bed. The air was so unbreathable, the odor given off by the room was so rank that it was impossible for us to stay any longer to proceed with our investigation. So, imagine that these police officers couldn't stay inside her room for assuming an hour. I mean, how much time does it take for an investigation? As an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 25 years? I guess not. But these police officers couldn't stay in her room for a matter of hours or minutes. And Blanche had to stay in that condition for 25 years. You know, do you realize that? Quarter of a century. So the chain of events, what might have happened the night when she was imprisoned was that Blanche, just like a routine day, she had routine night actually. That she got back home after meeting the lawyer. The lawyer's name is not revealed, and I think that's all right if he wants to maintain his privacy. Of course, he's long dead now, but let's not drag a person's name in a story where he does not want to be. So we'll just call him the lawyer. So Blanche had returned after meeting the lawyer, and she was trying to climb the footsteps without waking her brother or her mother, because she knew that if they woke up, it'll be a big trouble and she would be in a bigger trouble than that. But too much to her surprise, they were awake and they were kind of waiting for her on the top of the stairs. That was the night the mother, that is Louise, decided to imprison, basically lock Blanche in the house, in that attic, saying that she'd be allowed to go out if she decides to marry someone else, a suitor who is better suited, who is more rich than this lawyer. And Blanche was just not giving up. She was not a quitter, and she's like, nay, nay, I'm gonna marry the one I'm gonna marry. What are you gonna do about it? Lock me for 25 years? And Louise went like, that's a good idea. I mean, this did not happen. This conversation did not take place, but this is how I imagine it must have been. I really hope it was not. So when police rescued her, she was taken to hospital, and what description was given about the mother was that Louise just sat calmly in her living room with a warm smile on her face, and she said, "It must be pleasant outside." What a psychopath. What a psychopath. So subsequently, the mother Louise and the brother Marseille were arrested because, of course, they both are pieces of shits and they should be arrested. And this is a part of the story that makes me real sad. I just told you a story about a woman who was in prison for 25 years, but this is the part that makes me sad. Yeah, right. And that's true, because 15 days, not months, I guess, what's wrong with me? 15 days after the rescue of Blanche, that piece of shit mother, she died. She just left the earth. She's like, well, I'ma head out. And she couldn't be punished for her crimes. And that's just so sad. I mean, why? So now the mother was dead, and the brunt of the injury was to be borne by the brother, because come on, he was an accomplice, he was abetting the crime, and he too is whatever. But he too, was involved in this humiliation and torture that Blanche's life and living condition was. So of course Marseille was arrested, and people got to know about this, and everybody was furious, and Blanche received a lot of public support that tum sangharsh karo, hum tumhare saath hai kind of situation. And that kind of put a social pressure on the judges to give the judgment in this case soon, because people were getting restless. And the last time people of France got restless, we all know what happened in 1789, right? In case you do not know, French Revolution. Coming back to the story, so the judge, now this is another part of the story that's like really disgusting, and I hate it, because Marseille, oh, what did I just do to my hair? Fuck. So Marseille said that Blanche was actually aggressive. She was showing symptoms of aggression, and she was really hot-headed, and she was mentally not stable, and therefore they kept her locked in the attic. But nobody was buying that shit, alright? And the doctors just called out on this load of bullshit, and they're like, And the doctors who were treating Blanche completely gave a statement that was completely contradicting that. And they're like, nah, Blanche is good. She is docile, she's not aggressive, and now she's mentally unstable because you just put her in a hellhole for 25 years. What else are you expecting? But no, she is not showing any symptoms of violence whatsoever. So Marseille's statement kind of went to trash right away, and he just basically got cancelled. See, cancel culture is not that new. But then going forward, Marseille decided to give another stupid statement. Actually, I don't know why he said that, but then he's like, actually, you know what? Blanche was actually allowed to go out. We never just kept her in lock and key, she just decided to stay like that. Crazy woman, right? And then again, nobody bought that. So this time Marseille came out with this new theory as the only theory that he said, and I kinda am ready to accept it. And he said that he knew whatever was happening, and he kinda agreed that his sister was getting mistreated, like for the lack of words, mistreated. But come on, there has to be a word more harsh than mistreated here. But then the brother was like, yeah, I knew what was happening, but then you see my mom kind of owns the estate and all the money and all, and I wanted that inheritance, and for that I had to stay in mom's good books, and if I would just support Blanche, I'd lose my inheritance, and money, sister, yeah, money. Because you see, sisters ka kya hai? Money stays with you forever, family just might not. Marcel, dog, Marcel, hate him. So remember the part where I was telling you about how judiciary failed this person, and now we can all call her by the name Marcel, Blanche Monnier. Well, you see, in the French law, it's not a crime to overlook if something wrong is happening. You see, the duty to rescue is not in existence. Since something bad is happening to someone else and I know about it, according to French law, I am not under the obligation to protect that person or to save that person, you see. And therefore, though the main accused was mom who passed away, there was no case, and there was no case legally to be made. Morally this person's a piece of shit, right? But how are you gonna explain that to judiciary? Like, the judge has to go by the books, and by the books Marcel did nothing wrong. But even then, because I told you that this case was getting a lot of heat from the public, and you better stay away from French public, unhappy, guillotine. Not that I'm implying anything here. French people are really gonna hate me if they see this video. But I kind of totally forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, the judge. So nevertheless, the judge gave him imprisonment for 15 months. 15 months. 25 years in an attic with no sunlight. Oh yeah, and did I tell you about the fact that this woman did not even have sunlight for 25 years? Like, the window of her room was shut. It had all the panels and all to block sunlight. So she kind of became like Dracula. Like, she couldn't sustain sunlight even after she was released, And after doing all of this, Marcel got 15 months of imprisonment. But let me tell you what happens. Now, I am just so, it makes me so angry. What's gonna happen next is that Marcel is a lawyer, by the way. Can you imagine that? Like, Blanche imprisoned for trying to marry a lawyer. Your brother, a lawyer. I mean, hypocrisy. Damn. So because Marcel was a very eloquent lawyer and he knew that he had no duty to rescue, he kind of went for appeal and he was acquitted there. Can you imagine that? He was acquitted on the grounds that he was not legally obliged to save or help Blanche, and it was the mother who did everything. And it's kind of convenient for you to put everything on a dead woman, because what she's gonna do, right? And also this other thing that really disgusted me was, like, he said that, though I know a lot of wrong things were happening to my sister, I used to sit by her and I used to read newspaper. Yeah, I am a very good brother, because so what if she is imprisoned in her own house? I mean, it's okay, no, at least I used to read newspaper for her. This man tried to deflect from his responsibility by making all this ridiculous and outrageous statement. I mean, he was a lawyer, alright, there's no doubt to that. So now coming to the point where I told you about how institutions of society failed Monnier. So the thing is, when somebody is imprisoned someplace and they shout, they scream for help. Though it is said that a lot of her neighbors did hear her scream out loud, but they did nothing about it because it was not their business. Also, if you look into the history of France, from that time, mental institutions, even for that matter, mental illnesses had a stigma attached to them. I can't even say go back to that time. Even today, mental illnesses have a lot of stigma related to that. So if you just put that in a more conservative environment, what these people said was like, even if somebody would raise a question and Louis would go like, oh yeah, she is not mentally healthy, she's a bit cuckoo, so we kind of put her upstairs so that she just, she won't disturb anybody. And the worst of all was, there's a woman who's screaming for help, and then there's this woman who said, oh yeah, uska to roz ka hai, just ignore her. And these people, they just ignored. The neighbors knew that she was imprisoned in her own house and did nothing about it. The servants knew that she was imprisoned in her own house and did nothing about it. There were multiple people who were kind of aware. Even these servants, they would go out and they would tell the story. Oh, it's an amusing story, right? Oh yeah, do you know the place I work? They have this woman hidden in the attic and she screams for help like all the time. But guess what? I'm just gonna gossip about it. So this is what servants used to do. So a lot of people in that community kind of knew where Blanche is and they did nothing about it. Nothing at all. There's a statement that was said that was supposedly recorded, not recorded, but somebody heard Blanche speak, scream, save me, help me, etc., etc. 8 years after she was imprisoned, and still nobody did anything. During this course of imprisonment, Blanche lost the use of her tongue. She couldn't talk anymore. She lost weight like anything. 25 kgs is very less. She started to suffer from a lot of mental problems which she did not have before. But come on, she was in prison for so long, it's understandable. Okay, let's give her some break. And by the time she was rescued, she was suffering from anorexia nervosa, that is an eating disorder, schizophrenia, god, I just said that correct, schizophrenia, exhibitionism, and coprophilia. Now for those who do not know what coprophilia is, it is getting sexual arousal out of feces. So they really messed her up. And then eventually in 1913, that's 12 years after her rescue, she passed away. But she never fully recovered. Blanche was never herself ever again. And this is this very sad story of I don't know, I feel so bad for her. This is a very sad story of a very bright young woman who could have had a very different fate. And so this is my second attempt at ending this video, and I'd just like to say that help people, okay? If you think somebody needs your help, don't go there if you don't want to. Just inform somebody that I think something shady is happening there. Why don't you just check it out? I mean, only one of the neighbors had complained. Only one of the servants had said anything to any police officer, man. Not even to the person who had her captured, but just to police. Like, listen, I work in so and so place, and something shady is going on. Why not just give it a check, right? Nobody did anything. That's the saddest part of, like, this is something that has not changed in society at all. People were not helpful then, and people are not helpful now, and I think that we should do something about it, right? Yeah. And also I forgot to add it, but whoever wrote the letter to Paris general attorney was never known. That was an anonymous tip. So be kind is what we can take from this true crime.